That scene where they first discover the facehuggers still gives an entire generation the creeps, even though they know what's coming next. But when you hear these 20 weird facts about Ridley Scott's 1979 masterpiece, Alien, you'll be even more creeped out. Make sure to stick around to the end to hear the amazing bonus fact as well, Giger's design.
Yeah. I mean, if I have some people they want to see my work, then I send them to Gruyère. It's the French part of Switzerland.
If there is one thing that this movie is known for, it's for its hair-raising design aesthetic that mixes biological factors and mechanical monstrosities to create something that is truly alien to all of us. This aesthetic was achieved by Swiss artist H.R. Giger's vision. Ridley Scott had discovered Giger's work while working on the film and was impressed, especially by his painting The Necronom IV. While the studios were extremely skeptical about bringing such an aesthetic, Ridley Scott was adamant that he wanted Giger to work with him. Giger eventually provided the design for not just the Alien but also the derelict ship and the background environments as well. Although the studio was scared that the imagery would be too strong, that is exactly what the audience ended up enjoying. The Nostromo. There's one thing that this movie seems to get spot on all the time, and it's the production design.
Like I've said before, I really love filming models. This is obviously from Independence Day. It's one of the alien ships from Independence Day. And knowing that they're models, most everyone did when they first saw the movie or see it today, but I don't think people realize just how big filming models can be. And compared to another filming model that's in this building, this thing is quite small.
One of the best designed sets of the entire movie was the Starship Nostromo. Production designer Michael Seymour and co-art directors Les Dilley and Roger Christian wanted the ship to not only look industrial and highly technical, but also lived in. To achieve this effect, they purchased old scrap material and pieces from old aircraft jet engines, which ended up giving the Nostromo its iconic look and feel. Dilley and Christian wanted the sets to reflect the gritty reality of the crew and wanted everything around them, including the ship, to feel alien to the audience. Designing Mother. One of the more nefarious plot points about this movie was the introduction of Mother, the artificial intelligence or operating system that the Nostromo used to operate on. The system was nicknamed Mother because of its model number MU/TH/UR6000. The feminine voice provided to the system by way of Helen Horton's voice. Acting adds a layer of sinister calm to the system that lulls most of the audience into thinking that she is good. The addition of Mother was a great touch for the movie because it added on the aspect of betrayal, as the one thing the crew relied on without thinking twice was their ship's artificial intelligence. Giger designed Mother to look more organic with several cables running through, giving it that uncanny feel. Weaver's audition.
Next time they walk right up and knock.
Yeah, but they don't know that. They're probably looking for other ways to get in.
One of the best aspects about this movie was Sigourney Weaver's amazing portrayal of the character Ripley. But what's crazy is that when Weaver had auditioned for the role, she wasn't even sure if she wanted to be in a movie. But director Ridley Scott insisted that he build a set for her just so she could audition comfortably. Even though Sigourney wasn't sure whether she wanted to be in the acting industry, she ended up absolutely acing her audition, which ended up landing her the role of the iconic warrant officer of the Nostromo. The budget. When you look at a movie like The Alien, you might think that it cost a stupendous amount of money to build, direct, and shoot, but that's where you're wrong. The movie's entire budget only came up to some $11 million or so, which was quite low considering their turnover was nearly 10 times that amount, with the movie amassing more than $100 million worldwide. What 20th Century Fox believed to be a niche, sci-fi horror flick ended up becoming one of their largest franchises. The sequel to this movie ended up drawing in nearly 130 million worldwide. Set designs. One of the best things about this entire movie was the Nostromo's stellar set design. Of course, it wasn't because the Nostromo looked like a pristine spacecraft, but instead looked like a real spaceship that had been inhabited by 6 people, with various little details in the background reinforcing the fact that the Nostromo was a working space vessel. From the food that the crew is shown to eat to the sinks and unbreakable dishes on the shelves, everything about the ship screamed that this was more of a truck in space than a starship.
I remember some horrible dream about smothering.
The set design for the Nostromo truly made it feel like there were people living aboard it, rather than simply existing in it. The alien.
A special strong against the wall that they will build together.
Well, we can't talk about set design without talking about one of the most well-constructed props of the modern cinema era, the alien itself. If you felt terrified of this creature when you watched the movie, it would be for good reason. Giger, who involved himself in the design for the alien, ended up building several parts of the alien himself and even used pieces of real animal bones and horns to design parts of the alien. It's rumored that he even used actual human skull parts in the skull of the alien, which was hidden under the smooth exoskeletal dome. These design choices would add a layer of realism that no one would be ready for. Accolades. Alien wasn't just a masterpiece in production design, it was also a masterpiece in visual storytelling and effects. When the movie was nominated for the Oscars in 1980,
present tonight the nominees for Outstanding Achievement in Visual Effects, and they are H.R. Giger, Carlo Rambaldi, Brian Johnson, Nick Alder, and Dennis Ailing for Alien.
it ended up winning the award for Best Visual Effects and was also nominated for Best Art Direction. The film had also won a Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation and even won multiple Saturn Awards, including the awards for Best Science Fiction, Film, and Best Director.
3 years ago, when I was here for King Kong, I don't know English, and they say thank you. Now I learn very well English, and they say thank you very much.
The cinematographer for the movie, Derek Van Lint, ended up being honored with a nomination to the British Society of Cinematographers nomination, and the score for the movie, which was composed by Jerry Goldsmith, ended up winning the BAFTA Award for Best Film Score, The Facehugger. An argument could be made for the movie where we could claim that the alien wasn't even the creepiest part about the film. It was, without a doubt, the facehuggers. The design for the facehuggers is something that went through many iterations. Giger, who was in charge of making the design,
face, and particularly this ball-sacky part of the facehugger's thorax or whatever is so iconic to the movie. It is the first thing that frightened me about the movie.
Initially wanted the facehugger to be much larger, but it was then decided that it would be much creepier to make the facehugger small with long finger-like appendages.
Said that's it. Giger has an extra quality of, I think one of the most frightening things of all is a quality of reality.
The facehugger's tube-like proboscis was literally made from a sheep's intestine and was pressure-fitted with an inner needle for the face-hugging effect. And to give the facehuggers an even creepier narrative twist, they gave them highly corrosive blood, the chestburster scene. The chestburster scene is perhaps one of the most horrifying scenes in the entire movie. But what's even crazier is that the entire scene was achieved using practical effects alone. Screenwriter Dan O'Bannon drew on his own medical trauma of suffering from Crohn's disease and brought it to life. The scene was shot in one take, and the cast was only informed that the larvae would burst through. But no one told them about the ensuing splatter of blood. The reactions you see on the faces of John Hurt and Veronica Cartwright were completely legitimate, which made the scene all the more realistic. Are you enjoying the video so far? Well, if you stuck around this long, make sure to stay till the end to hear the amazing bonus fact. Catchphrase. If you were alive during the time Alien was released, you probably saw posters for the movie in your town, but even if the terrifying visual didn't capture your attention, the catchphrase definitely would have. George Lefferts wrote the infamous catchphrase for the movie In Space, No One Can Hear You Scream, which drew on the sci-fi horror aspect of the movie, where cinemas often portrayed space as the final frontier for man filled with hope and wonder. Alien showed the masses that there is perhaps more to fear in space than to explore. The catchphrase arguably became more famous than the movie itself. Preserved. Even if you don't think the move was all that great, the US government sure does. The United States Library of Congress selected the film for preservation in the National Film Registry in 2002 after realizing just how much of a cultural impact the film had, not just in the realm of film, but also in the general cultural dialogue.
Unfortunately, by breaking quarantine, you risk everybody's life.
Maybe I should have left him outside. Maybe I've jeopardized the rest of us, but it was a risk I was willing to take.
For a movie to be considered worth preserving by the Library of Congress, it has to be culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant, and Alien checks all of those boxes. It culturally gave rise to sci-fi horror, historically impacted the way people look at space, and ended up providing a new kind of aesthetic that hadn't been seen till today. Franchise. 20th Century Fox was highly skeptical about Ridley Scott's vision, as it was something that had never been attempted before and went against all the norms and trends of the time. But the film ended up being so successful that it spawned an entire franchise.
10. B guns drive, 20 on A. 10. 5.
The film ended up getting 3 sequels, which all did relatively well, but it seems like the franchise began to lose steam after a prequel movie was released in 2012 titled Prometheus. Nonetheless, the game, Alien Isolation, would once again rocket the franchise to stardom after it was critically acclaimed for being one of the best video games of the decade. The Nostromo.
And all the details, which are called in the industry greebles or greeblies, were model parts or bits of brass tubing and that sort of thing. And just standing here, this close to it, I can see little parts of 1/35th scale anti-tank rifles from
The Nostromo is perhaps one of the best designed ships of all time. But what's even more interesting is how the ship was finally named. Production concept artist Ron Cobb chose the name Nostromo for the ship based off the 1904 novel by Joseph Conrad by the same name. The name for the escape shuttle, Narcissus, was also based off another one of Conrad's novels that we can't say on YouTube because of its explicit title. The reason why Conrad's novels were picked was for their nautical themes, which were reflected in the movie. The Nostromos and Narcissus were seen as nautical vessels sailing through the endless abyss of space. Jonesy! Every ship has a mascot, be it a real ship or a spaceship, and the Nostromo was no different. Everyone who watched the film remembers seeing Jonesy the orange tabby who travels with the crew of the Nostromo. But what people don't realize is that 4 different cats were used to portray Jonesy. And although Sigourney Weaver was allergic to cat hair, she agreed to shoot the scenes with the cat as long as she didn't have to use glycerin to stimulate sweat, as it was always done in the film, as she found the combination of this glycerin and cat hair highly irritating, doubling the budget. The Alien, while a commercial success, did require a modest budget to film, as it required elaborate set constructions and production designing, which came up to nearly $11 million. But initially, 20th Century Fox, the studio that was going to fund the film, only gave Ridley $4 million. Scott ended up convincing the studio to double the budget after providing them with intricate hand-drawn storyboards, which are now called the Ridleygrams. The executives at Fox were so impressed, that even though they doubled the budget, they were still willing to shell out more for Ridley to complete his vision. Replacing Kane. Of course, the scene where Kane has an alien burst out of his chest is one that is ingrained in the minds of everyone that has ever seen the film. But the thing that really sells this scene is the actor John Hurt's acting. Hurt's realistic convulsing and screams made the entire cast recoil in shock. But what's crazy is that Hurt was never the original choice for the role. John Finch, who was originally cast for the role, had to back out last minute because of several health complications that arose due to his asthma. Scott frantically searched for a replacement and asked Hurt to stand in, who arrived on set at a moment's notice with no idea as to what the movie was even about. But Hurt ended up giving such an iconic performance that it would be remembered for the ages. Real guts. Coming back once more to the chestburster scene, there is just so much about this scene that makes it a masterpiece that some of the things that were done to make it as perfect as it was are absolutely disgusting. Apparently, to make the scene even more realistic, the production team bought cow intestines and stomach to stuff into the prosthetic torso that would be used for the scene. The smell was apparently so overwhelming that a few of them were gagging even before the scene started. Goes to show why this scene still holds up so well after so many years. Captain Dallas. The movie consists of a team of officers and scientists, led by Captain Dallas, played by Tom Skerritt. In the film, at least the theatrical release, we never see what happens to Captain Dallas after he tries to explore the air shafts. His fate is left ambiguous and Ripley eventually declares him dead. But what's crazy is that in the director's cut, we see that Dallas gets captured by the alien and cocooned, sealing his horrific fate. Who is the alien? The alien is an imposing creature in the filming, towering over everything and everyone. But what's crazy is that the alien wasn't a prop but a costume. And who operated this costume? Well, it was 6 feet 10 inches Nigerian design student Bolaji Badejo. Badejo, who had no prior acting experience, agreed to do the role for Ripley. Actors like Veronica Cartwright and Sigourney Weaver remember feeling genuinely disturbed watching Badejo in the costume the first time. Bonus fact, Ripley was a man. Ripley, the main character of the show, and the person to finally survive the chaos and escape the alien, was initially intended to be acted by a male role. But the studios decided that they wanted to take a step in the other direction and show the audiences that the hero of typical sci-fi horror movies could also be women. Actresses like Helen Mirren had auditioned for the role, but it was finally given to Sigourney Weaver, who ended up knocking the role out of the park and also launched her career in the cinema industry. If you like this video, we think you will enjoy this one. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell as well. Make sure to leave a comment as well telling us which fact was your favorite.